and whatever we could add to that. And to the rats and the stool pigeons who are here, who were sent here, sitting up among us, donating money, dropping it in the bucket, trying to act like you black when you got a white mind. You're a fool for coming in here to spy on your people. The white man didn't come. He sent you. I'm going to do everything I can to wake our people up so that when we find out who you are, we will kill you in the most vicious manner for coming and snitching on our people against the legitimate inspirations of our people who yearn to breathe free. Cut your damn head off. Cut your right leg off and leave your left leg on. Burn your behind, boil your behind alive first, and then burn your behind to the ashes, and then flush your ashes down the toilet. Only way to get free, we got to get strong. This weak stuff is not going to do it. Don't go backwards, brothers and sisters. Don't let anybody take you backward. Don't go back. It has failed. I know what Brother Malcolm said. He saw them and they were some of the best white men he had ever seen. And that proved to him that if the white man in America received Islam, if the white man in America received Islam, he said, he thought that it could transform him. I've been to Mecca 8 times. See, God hooked me up right. I didn't get suspended from the nation and then go to Mecca. I had been 8 times before I got suspended. You know, God has a big eraser, you know. Working on the stuff that went down in the 60s, that's all the 90s is a 6 turn right side up, correct it. So I went before. I saw white, Arab, Muslims so damn racist until you can cut racism in the atmosphere with a knife. Give me just a few more minutes. You have no business taking Elijah Muhammad's teaching and now following Wallace D. Muhammad back to the cracker's arms and his clutches in Sunni Islam. So-called Sunni Islam, so-called Orthodox Islam cannot free you any more than Sunni Christianity or Orthodox Christianity of the white man after he distorted the message of Jesus, the black revolutionary Messiah. You gonna follow the Arabs? You don't know a damn thing about Islam. None of you. Yes, you can recite the Quran. Yes, you can recite the Bible. But do you know the real history? Do you know that the Kaaba in Mecca that sits there as the spiritual center? Do you know that the Kaaba, when you study the ancients of your own people, not the damn Arabs, you sit around the mosque and the masjid glorying in Arab history, Arab scholarship, Arab warriors and Arab stories, and when so-and-so did this, and Abu so-and-so, and Kareem so-and-so, and Abdullah so-and-so, and Muhammad this. Shut your damn mouth. Study your own history. If you study your own history, you will know that the Kaaba that sits as the spiritual center of the Islamic world has a root in your African mama and your African daddy and your African great-grandmother and great-grandfather and down the line. When you study the Medu Nectar of ancient Egypt or Kemet, you will know that the Ka and the Ba represents the spirit and the soul, that the real Kaaba in Mecca is not a house built by people there, but the real Kaaba I'm looking at, it's you, black man. You are that black ancient house of God. You are the Ka and the Ba. You are the ancient house of God. You are the Beit Allah. Let's look at it. Your holy holiday where you fast for 30 days, you call it Ramadan. Don't go too fast. Let's break it down. It's Ramadan. What is it? It's Ramadan. When you pray your prayer, you say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah. And you go on till you get to the end and you say, Ameen. Amen who? Amen Ra. When the Christian preacher gets through praying, he says, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. When he gets through praying, he says, Amen. Amen who? Amen Ra. When the Jew rabbi, the impostor bastard, when he prays trying to steal our birthright from us. Kadima Yaum Milah Shalom Ma Shalom Ka. When he finishes praying, he says, Amen. Amen who? Amen Ra. The white Christian, the white Jew, so-called, the white Muslim, when you all finish, you end in Amen, the name of the ancient God, the hidden one, the prime mover behind all things. Amen Ra. You can't get away from your black self, black man, black woman, trying to hide in white air of Islam. Not as long as there's a breath in Khalid Abdul Muhammad. I will face your guns. I will face your bullets. I will face all of you bastards, and I'll back your asses up with the truth of Almighty. Damn it. You have no right to do these people that way. You have gotten old and scared, some of you, weak and broke down, or you want a little money now. You have no right to do these people that way. Do nectar, and you understand that the original name for Mecca was Becca, and in the Medu Nectar, Becca representing the eastern direction, but not for everybody. Some of you erroneously say that all Muslims face the east and pray. That's not the truth. That's a damn lie. All Muslims don't face the east and pray. You face the Kaaba. It's the spiritual center. If you live in the north, you face south if the Kaaba is to your south. If you live in the south, you face to the north if the Kaaba is towards your north. If you're in the west, you face east. And if you're in the east, you face west because it's in the center. And if you're all around it, you have to face whatever direction that it's in. All of these errors. Elijah Muhammad was right and exact. When the teachings of Elijah, whether you want to be a Muslim, black nationalist, and I'm that, Pan-Africanist, and I'm that, revolutionary nationalist, and I'm that, black liberation theology teacher, student, and I'm both student and teacher, whatever you call yourself. As long as Elijah Muhammad's teaching is strong among the people are strong. When you remove that strong teaching from among our people, our poor, pitiful people go down to almost nothing, and they go back to wallowing in the filth of integration, reveling at the feet of the white man, begging the white man for freedom and liberty. When you tell them to stop calling the white man the devil, a whole generation has grown up that did not know that the white man was the devil. Another generation had gone to sleep that used to know that the white man was the devil. And so the best way to teach is to teach by repetition until the student has learned the lesson. Our condition bears witness that we have not learned the lesson. Mumia being behind bars proves on death row that we have not learned the lesson. And our many other political prisoners and those who are on death row, it proves that we have not learned the lesson. Look at it for what it's worth. In Mecca, in Haram Sharif, the sacred precinct, inside of the eastern corner of the Kaaba is a black stone called El Rukin, called El Hajar al-Aswad. The black stone, El Hajar al-Aswad, El Rukin. Pilgrims from all over the world go and kiss the black stone and say, Allahu Akbar. God is the greatest. If they can't get to it to kiss it, they point to it and they make circumambulation around the Kaaba with their focus on the black stone inside of Mecca, 6 miles outside of Mecca, not allowed to be set up in or within the sacred precinct. There's 3 white pillars, small, medium, and large, snow white. All of the pilgrims the night before make a journey to the valley of Muzdalifah and gather 49 stones. And the next day they stand before the white pillars and they all stone the white pillars from all over the world. They stone them and say, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. They throw with all of their might against the little devil, the medium-sized devil, and the big devil. Shaitan, little shaitan, medium shaitan, and shaitan kabir, or shaitan al-akbar. The white pillars are outside of Mecca, 6 miles. Can't go into Revelation 13 and 18 tonight. Another subject for another time, the mark of the beast and 666. But we got Brother Steve Coakley with us tomorrow night. Check. Check. Where is Steve Coakley? No, he sneaked in here and I didn't even know he was in here. Give him a hand back there, brothers and sisters. Brother Steve Coakley. Let him see you, Brother Steve. There he is. He'll name the names. He'll pull out the research. And that's what we need, actual facts. Actual facts. It's true. I try to cover these things with you. Islam did not start with Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him. Islam means to enter into peace. We had peace before Prophet Muhammad. Huh? The rituals of Christianity, the 10 Commandments, coming from the declarations of innocence of Mayat. Cracker took 10 of the 47. Can't live by the 147. Can't live by the 10. And said, damn, I better leave the rest of these up. The creation story of the book of Genesis. Make the pilgrimage to the first holy city where pilgrimages were made, not to Mecca, but the holy city of Abydos. Go to the temple of Seti I, in the sacred temple of Seti I in Abydos, and read the creation story on the wall. You can't escape, Christian. Your Christianity is from your enemy. Christianity is from the devil himself. Your Islam is from your enemy. Your Islam is from the devil himself. Your Judaism is from the devil. Your Judaism is from the enemy himself. Somebody got to be born. Where are the men who will stand with us? How many of you understood what you heard tonight? Let me see your hands. Hands down. How many of you believe what you heard to be the truth and good for black people? Let me see your hand. How many of you don't know what the hell you believe? Let me see your hand. How many want to see the new Black Panther Party for self-defense come back? How many want to see us set up free food programs to feed our black multitudes? Let me see your hand. How many of you want to set up free clothing programs so that we can clothe our people, put shoes on their feet, and put coats on their back when it's cold outside? How many of you want to see the black family back together? Black man back with his black woman. There is no woman like the black woman, black man. No woman like the black woman. Don't you let no revolutionary fancy talk. Don't you let no religious fancy talk. No Christianity, no Judaism. Don't you let no Islam, no communism. Don't you let nothing put you with the white man's woman and you abandon your own woman. This black woman is the best. This black woman is the one. The one and only, Dr. Barashango is saying on the front row. That's that black woman. Mother of civilization. Queen of the planet Earth. Goddess of the universe. Oh, black man, we've been blessed. You leave Susie Rodwinkle alone. Give me a black goddess sister. I can't resist her. No blonde hair, blue-eyed, pale skin, buttermilk complexion, recessive, depressive, straight up but straight down, Miss 6 o'clock, no frills, no thrills, euthanoid, caucasoid, subject to have the itch, white cave bitch. Now for me, give me the black woman, give me the black woman, this black woman. Sisters, when you hear that they don't let white women in the house, you should raise holy hell. Keep them bitches out of here. Give a damn how long her dress is. Her wickedness is longer than her dress. Give me the black woman. The black woman, black man, that's the precious divine gift to us. She keeps us warm in the wintertime. She keeps us cool in the summertime and keeps us hot all year round. I love you, brothers and sisters. I only ask one thing of you, just be strong. Stand tall. Mumia needs us to intensify the effort. Press. If you're in the courts, keep the pressure on. If you're in the streets, keep the pressure on. If you're planning underground, plan well. As Brother Harif said, plan well. Be wise. If I die or get killed, I don't care. All I want to know is that I lived my life in a way that would put spirit of fight, truth, righteousness, harmony, balance, order, and reciprocity in my people. That's all a man could live. That's all a woman could live for. That somebody, that the seed of revolution will take, and righteousness will take a root in their head and in their heart. And some cracker policeman, after murdering our people, will be sitting at Dunkin' Donuts off guard, dunking his donut in his coffee. And some good black man, some good black woman will sneak up on him and ease upon him. At nighttime, as Malcolm used to say, when it's even steep. At nighttime, wearing all black, even when they're butt naked. We ease up on him and blow his goddamn brains out until his brain splatters in his coffee and in his donut. With their ski mask on. Thank you. Thank you. Got to have your ski mask. Got to have your ski mask. We learned that at the Million Youth March. Everybody who comes to the Million Youth March, when will it be this year? Saturday. Repeat after me. Saturday, August 14th, on Malcolm X Boulevard in Harlem, during the Honorable Marcus Garvey's Red, Black, and Green Week. Everybody bring a ski mask. If you can't get a ski mask, bring a black bandana or something to put over your face. Keep it with you. Some will wear it all day. Some, if it looks like something is about to break out, put it on there. So you can beat the hell out of any peckerwood who attacks us in self-defense that day, and they won't know from whence is behind whipping came. And August 14th, during the Honorable Marcus Garvey's Red, Black, and Green Week, is Brother Hiram's birthday. Let's give him a happy Kuzaliwa. A happy Kuzaliwa is solar return earth. I want to take just a minute or two for any questions that you might have. We've talked about May 24th. Is that correct? I'm talking about May 10th first. I'm sorry, I got the 2 months. May 10th, the Million Youth March 2. You must know the work that we've already done. And we're going to ask you for some more money before you leave. They had a $20,000 bond on one of the brothers. They had a $15,000 bond on another brother. Cash bond. They arrested 4 or 5 of us. I'm happy to report to you, every one of them is out of jail and at home. We got every one of them out of jail, and every one of them is at home. We only have 2 left now. All the cases, Attorney Roger Wareham, and he has now waived Attorney Malik Shabazz into the state of New York. He's taking one to represent him, and Attorney Wareham is taking the other one. We need some money. And all of the thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, we raised it. And in a short period of time, cash bonds, no property. They wouldn't accept any property to get them out. So the Million Youth March 2, the date that I had in my head about May, is May 10th. We want to be in court with them. We want to have so many black youth there, so many black elders there, so many black men and black women there, till we overflow the courtrooms, all down the halls and all outside. The Million Youth March Two, we want to defend them. I wish we had the address of the court. What's that court? But that's what center? 100 Center Street. 100 Center Street. You should be there about 8 o'clock in the morning, May 10th, in court. Now, April 24th, and our millions for Mumia, we want all roads lead where? To Richard Allen City, that you call what? Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and insanely, the city of brotherly love. All roads lead here. April 24th. What's the location? Where will we begin? At City Hall, April 24th. Brothers and
Peace, and Black Power family. Welcome to another episode of Do Not Radio, place where not spawn. This is your host, Knowledge One Alive, and we are here to pay honor and tribute to our warrior comrade on his born day, Mumia Abu-Jamal. And just heard the remarks from the Free Mumia rally from Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad's fiery speech, Stop the Execution, Start the Revolution. So I'm going to bring in our soul sister, our warrior sister, this divine warrior black woman here on the platform, and hear her thoughts on our warrior brother who is serving a death sentence. And the bastard sinner behind enemy lines, our prisoner of war. Further behind enemy lines, we are all behind enemy lines here in the hells and smells of North America and all over the diaspora, and even our brothers and sisters on the mother continent who are under colonialist and neo-colonialist rule find ourselves subjected to being prisoners of war. So when we say free political prisoners, we are talking about Africans all over the planet and don't give a good goddamn about anybody else on the planet and their people. They have agencies working diligently for the release of their people. We should have agencies that don't include our enemies in the release of our people. So let me bring to the microphone Shawal Weed, O Nation Not Desired, Sass, aka Assassin.
Shalom, knowledge, shalom, everybody. Excuse me. How's it going?
This is a day of celebration, a day of infiltration, agitation, and insurrection. So this is a holy day for me, as is every day above ground as an African liberator. Just especially today, just especially today, this day. So, in the spirit of our warrior ancestors, our warrior elders, our warrior peer group, and our warrior future generations, we are gathered here today.
Okay, so before we start, I just want to say Shabbat Shalom to Israel. And I also want to ask you if you could tell us, like, in like a couple of sentences, who George Jackson is. Just a couple of sentences. 'Cause, you know.
I gotta read from him.
Okay.
I gotta read from him because, as Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad so eloquently put that, Asafo was talking about Jonathan Jackson, and many of you may ask, or they may think, or they might refer to me, and say, okay, that's Jonathan Jackson on Facebook. When I set my credentials in to Facebook, they said I couldn't use my own name. So I thought of a name that would enthrall the people who knew and throw off the people who didn't. So I thought of a name that would suit me. I thought of a name that would line up and be akin with my life on the planet as a protector of my family, as a protector of African women, as a protector of African people, the youth, the elderly, as a venerator of our elders and our ancestors. And I looked at a young man, a man child, a man who changed from just being a man to a movement in a militia, and his name was Jonathan Percy Jackson. And he had an older brother who was trapped behind enemy lines. And on August 7th, 1970, he went to the Marin County Courthouse for justice for his brother. Jonathan Jackson is the reason for the metal detectors in the courthouse. He's the reason for the metal detectors in the courthouse, for the security at the courthouse. He went into the courtroom and took the court officials out of the courtroom and said, we'll be taking over from here, in efforts to free his brother. His brother is George Lester Jackson. His brother is George Lester Jackson, the author of the Soledad Brothers and Blood in My Eye, the Black Dragon, who brought hell to this beast, who brought hell to the guards in the prison population, who gave his life so that others could be free. This Black Dragon, this military strategist, this angel of the Most High God, this angel of the Most High Power, who had the prison administration trembling in their boots. This warrior, this Black Dragon. This was, we was talking about Ghost Dog yesterday. This was the Ghost Dog without the retainer. His retainer wasn't some cracker. His retainer was our people. And in his words, he says, we are going to have to fight to win. The logic of procrastination has been destroyed. A people can never be so repressed that they can't strike back in some way. I'm gonna read that again. A people can never be so repressed that they can't strike back in some way. We will purge the pauldrons and fight, or just ignore them. The reality of the power's automatic defense reflexes makes it possible for us to measure our own effectiveness. Their efforts to so seriously repress us indicate that we have reached the people, that we are finally in the fight, and we cannot ever be truly repressed. This is quite simply no way for an established government to defeat an internal, determined, aggressive enemy. Especially in an urban society, the mechanics, logic, and logistics of urban people's guerrilla warfare cannot be defeated. That's why I be talking about the politics gotta be right. This is why. Before you can get anybody together, what you're getting people together for, this inevitability of warfare, it cannot be with people that are half heart, that are mealy mouth, that do not have the same established political guidelines. They will turn your military fighting force from an asset to liberation to a liability of liberation. So you can't have this fierceness in your heart today and cower tomorrow. You can't have the flip flop, the seesaw riding, the fence straddling bastards in your formation, because your formation will go from formidable to cowardice. In the early service of the people, there must be totally committed professional revolutionaries who understand that all human life is meaningless if it is not accomplished by the controls that determine its quality. I am one of them. My life has absolutely no value because if you're seeking to save your life, you will lose your life. I'm the man under hatches, the desperate one, who will make the revolution. Nothing can stop us. We are not intimidated by the specter of repression. We are already repressed. The Black Legion and their terror leaves us cold, unafraid. We will meet it with counter terror. Listen to the words that comes from the man, and when the opportunity presented itself for the man to transform into the dragon, he did not hesitate in his duty. He did not fumble in his duty and responsibility. He was looking for an opening, and he began to decimate our enemies. So you got people that are with you. You got people that are screaming "Free Mumia," as you would see, and you would see him on his 66th born day with not a black face in sight, with everything else under the sun, every other demon under the sun, with a little bit of sprinkling of the pepper. The same ones who would scream black power now turn this into a class inequality struggle. Anybody can come in the goddamn class. And when you are a permanent underclass, you are not invited to the class. So how can it be a class struggle? How is the underclass struggling with the prominent class? When you make it force on force, when you make it man on man, when you make it family on family, you make it relevant. Families have addresses, families have telephone numbers. Families have IP addresses, whatever the fuck you call it. They have it. You can locate them. You can identify them. You can find out their location. Can't find no goddamn location of no class. You say this is a class struggle. This is an economic struggle. We have economic depravity. And we are in a situation where which we are economically locked out of a system. Who's in charge of the fucking system? This is what the understanding was. This is what the understanding was of the fighting force. This is the fighting force that liberated West Africa. This is the fighting force that got Haiti free. This is the fighting force that led to our ancestral prisoners of war being released from chattel bond service. This is what it understood. This is what it took. So on this fateful day, one who understood from the age of 14 years old what it took from the age of 14 years old when Martin Luther King was assassinated in 1968. 2 days later, little Bobby Hutton was assassinated. This young man was in the wings at 14 years old. So they thought they were done with the youth with little Bobby Hutton, but who was waiting in the wings? And who did not hesitate when it was time? Who gave up his formative years in his adult life? 30 years in solitary confinement. 30 years. He was working with the MOVE organization, working with the MOVE 9. Almost all of them are home, and he's still there. Now look at the situations that confront us as a people. And how could we as liberators in any good conscience whatsoever allow those who put their lives on the line and went through hell and been imprisoned? Will good conscience say that we stand with them and stand on their shoulders and they rot in prison? This is why this isn't everywhere. It's not broadcasting. This ain't for everybody. This is for the people who are going to find it. This ain't for everybody. This is for those who are going to find it and are prepared to implement liberation strategy. We look at our children. Mumia could never look at his children. He could never hug them. He could never hold them. He gave up that connection to his children's children for us. We ain't worthy of the mantle. We ain't worthy of the flag. We ain't worthy of these shoes. We ain't worthy of the baton. We ain't worthy of the rifle or the bayonet. Without demonstrated proof of what it takes to be free. And the marches and the fucking rallies ain't gonna do it. We allow the last of the few warriors who would have the implementation strategy to do so to be killed, to be exiled, to have so many assassination attempts on their life. They want nothing to do with it. To allow these rats, these snakes, these snitches, these provocateurs, these devil fucking advocates, these lowest life forms of existence to breathe. So Jonathan Jackson and George Jackson and the like was a warrior family that understood the price of liberation and paid the ultimate cost. That's a solid dad, brother. That's the definition of a solid dad, brother. That's the definition of a solid dad sister. So I know you said a few words, but a few words wouldn't do.
Of course not. Once again, this is it's a remembrance. Well, not remembrance, because Mumia Abu-Jamal is still alive, but it's kind of like remembering him on his birthday, right? So this is another case of the subject being heavy. So I'm just gonna touch on a few things, and hope it doesn't turn into hours because we don't have hours tonight. So, like I said, I'll do my best, but let me just do this word search real quick. This is what happens when I lose stuff. 1 second. All right, okay, so all right, let me begin. So I'm reading from Black Panther, like I always do. This is start off. So this is like mainstream information. So I'm just gonna read part of it. Okay, so Mumia Abu-Jamal, political activist and journalist. Mumia Abu-Jamal was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on April 24, 1954. Born Wesley Cook, he took the name of Mumia, which means prince, in high school while taking a class on African cultures. In 1971, he added Abu-Jamal, meaning father of Jamal, after the birth of his first son, Jamal. He has been married 3 times. So that's where his name comes from. So I'm going to scoot over here. Well, I mean, he has a website. So it's called freemumia.com. And I'm reading from who is Mumia Abu-Jamal. So, I mean, this is the best place to read from or to learn about him from, because he's alive, and he fights. Apparently, he fights every day. If you look at the website, it's updated like today, and he also speaks very often. So you can go and listen to what he says. You can also write him, in prison if you want to. And it's on his website, the address, and all the information that you will need. So we're just going to get into it. It says that Mumia Abu-Jamal, an internationally celebrated Black writer and radio journalist, author of 6 books and hundreds of columns and articles, organizer and inspiration for the prison lawyers movement, former member of the Black Panther Party and supporter of Philadelphia's Radical Move organization, who has spent the last 30 years in prison, almost all of it in solitary confinement on Pennsylvania's death row. His demand for a new trial and freedom is supported by heads of state and prominent politicians worldwide, Nobel laureates Nelson Mandela, Toni Morrison, Desmond Tutu, the European and Japanese parliaments, city governments from San Francisco to Detroit to Paris and its suburbs, distinguished human rights organizations such as Amnesty International, the Congressional Black Caucus, and other members of the U.S. Congress, prominent civil rights groups such as the NAACP, numerous labor unions such as, for some reason, I'm not totally convinced of this, and that's just my personal feelings. When you start throwing around Congressional Black Caucus, these are people in the Congress already who have lawmaking powers. And it says here, his demand for a new trial and freedom is supported by. So that I don't believe. It names the NAACP, labor unions. It's talking about other nations over here. It's named Bishop of the Catholic Church, a writer, a freedom fighter for apartheid, and basically all the other nations. It's prominent politicians worldwide, and it has France, Africa, the Caribbean, Latin America, and elsewhere. And by scholars, religious leaders, artists, scientists, and countless others who cherish democracy, human rights, and justice. Why is he still in prison today, right? It says here, Mumia's trial and conviction. Convicted and sentenced to death in 1982 for the murder of Philadelphia police officer Daniel Faulkner, an incident which took place on December 9th, 1991. For the next 30 years, Mumia was held in isolation on death row. He was kept there for over 10 years, even though a federal judge ordered his death sentence overturned in 2001. However, after losing numerous appeals of that order, the Philadelphia District Attorney on December 7, 2011, announced he was giving up his attempts to restore Mumia's death sentence. Mumia remains in prison under a sentence of life without parole. So it looks like right here that his death sentence was lifted and he was to be put in prison without ever getting out. So he has no chance of getting out on parole. And this was, it says Amnesty International on the trial and post-trial environment. So apparently Amnesty International was one who convened to at least get him off of death row. It says here, in this report, Amnesty International conducts a full analysis of the trial of Mumia Abu-Jamal, including the background and atmosphere prevailing in the city of Philadelphia in 1982 and the possible political influences that may have prevented him from receiving an impartial and fair hearing. The possible political influences that may have been, so he was discriminated against. He basically couldn't get a fair trial because people were intervening for him not to get trials and to they want him in prison forever. They want him to die in there, and that was basically what they wanted. So it kind of got what they wanted, but as long as he's behind bars, they're okay with that. It says here, what has been the state's claim? Philadelphia prosecutors argued and still claim that Mumia, driving a taxi in downtown Philadelphia, came across his brother who had been stopped by Officer Faulkner. Prosecutors further claimed that, motivated by a long-standing hatred of the police from his days as a Black Panther and supporter of MOVE, Mumia ran to Faulkner and shot him in the back. So the prosecutors claimed that because he was an ex-Black Panther and supporter of MOVE, that he ran up on the cop and killed him. And that's because he hates cops. Finally, they alleged that although wounded by a return shot from Faulkner, Mumia stood over the fallen police officer and shot him several times in the face. So that is why he's in prison now today. It's apparently Mumia has a lot of supporters. And the website goes into what do his supporters believe that happened at the crime scene. It also goes into what do those who oppose the new trial claim. Also, what have Mumia's lawyers argued? So it goes down, it's very long right here. And it says, where does the legal case stand now? And it says this section needs to be updated from the out-of-date information found at the bottom of this page. So there's a lot of information here about where's this legal case stand, but it needs to be updated. So it says here, what grounds do supporters cite when claiming Mumia's innocence? So supporters draw from and often combine 4 types of arguments. So the arguments are there. Why have Mumia's numerous appeals failed to result in a new trial? This needs to be updated as well. Why is Mumia's case struggle so important? It needs to be updated. So this just tells us that he keeps filing appeal after appeal after appeal after appeal, and he just does not stop. So even though he's behind bars, he does not stop fighting for his freedom. On the website, it also has like a fact sheet that was made in March 2018, which gives a background on his case intended for new audiences. So when Alice says that it's only for people who will look for this information, find it, you'll find it if you look for it, because there's no way that you're going to learn this anywhere else unless you're seeking the truth. So which is unfortunate, but the website has tons of information about everything about him, the legal statements, calendar events, contact information, who his supporters are, who keep this page updated. Also, like I said before, Mumia speaks on prison radio, and it is quite often. The last time he spoke was today. for almost 2 minutes. There's a message on there. He spoke a few times today. It looks like they broke it down like 1 minute and then 4 minutes, 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. So I would say about 10 minutes today. And the time before that was the 16th, the 10th, the 6th, the 27th. So he is very involved in his activism, even still, to this day. So he's not forgotten. And I just wanted to say like how I learned about Mumia Abu-Jamal, and it wasn't, and I think it was by mistake, because at the university level, because this stuff is just not taught in my family because nobody knows about anything about Black Panthers or the civil rights movement. They only know what most people know, and it's what's taught in school about Black history, right? So at the university level, when we're talking about philosophy and political science, the only door that you can go through to learn a little bit about the Black Panther movement is when you go through um, a ex-political prisoner. Her name is Angela Davis. So that's how far you're going to get. So they'll give you a tiny piece, like that's like an inkling of something, okay? And it goes into what type of movement this Black Panther movement was and how violent it was. This is what is taught. So and I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought because I got a text message. So so it teaches, so basically that's it. It teaches you about everything about Angela Davis, what she did, how she got into prison, how she and how she got off, how her charges were dropped. So it would be our due diligence to go into the Black Panther movement and do our own research to learn exactly what happened and what it was there for, instead of it being taught as these people being radicals and people who break the law and hold uprisings and becomes threat to the state, because that's what's being taught. So we're gonna try. I think Knowledge is gonna try to play the clips. I'm not sure which clips, but I don't hear it playing, but we're gonna give it some time. Okay, so it may, yeah, it's freezing. Okay, so I'm gonna keep going. He's trying to play the messages from Mumia Abu-Jamal today from prison radio, but I'm going to continue. So on the fact sheet, it says, "Who is Mumia Abu-Jamal?" And this can be downloaded. It's a one-page PDF, and it can be given out to children or teenagers who are learning about Black history. Okay, because this is something that basically needs to be taught. I know people say, "Well, why do we have to go to a book to learn our heritage or to learn how to conduct ourselves amongst our own people?" Simple and plain, so it won't be forgotten. That's it. So it won't be forgotten. So we live in a day and age where we have the internet, and what's beautiful about the internet is that all our information is there. There's bad stuff written by mainstream. You may want to disregard all of that because, yeah, or read everything and then come up with your own conclusion. That's what I do. But Mumia Abu-Jamal, it says here, and why does the 1% want him to die in jail? And it says a worldwide movement stopped Mumia Abu-Jamal from being executed, getting him off death row. So yes, he is again off of death row. Mumia is ill, but PA officials in denying him adequate medical care could cause his death unless we win his freedom soon. Why is Mumia framed? Check out the facts. So the whole fact sheet tells you how he was framed and how things are not adding up. But because of outside political influences that I read before, he could never get a free trial. So a fair trial. So let me go back. and go down here. Okay. So I'm going to go back to Black Past. It says here that Abu Jamal's first encounter with the police came when he was 14 years old. And I'll explain that earlier. He was beaten by a white Philadelphia police officer for disrupting a George Wallace for President rally in 1968. Eventually, he dropped out of high school and joined the Philadelphia chapter of the Black Panther Party. Jamal was appointed Black Panther Party's Lieutenant of Information, putting him in charge of organization's media relations and placing him on the radar for surveillance by the FBI. He eventually earned his graduate equivalency high school degree, GED, and briefly attended Goddard College in Vermont. So he's been under surveillance since he was 14 years old. In 1975, Abu-Jamal began working for a series of radio stations, using his commentary on issues of the day to advocate for social change. Due to his growing popularity, he was elected president of the Philadelphia Association of Black Journalists. Despite his popularity, Abu-Jamal was forced to take a second job as a taxi driver to supplement his income. Abu became nationally prominent. However, he was arrested for the murder of Philadelphia policeman Daniel Faulkner on December 9, 1981. Faulkner was shot and killed during a routine traffic stop involving Jamal's brother, William Cook. During the scuffle between Faulkner and Cook, Abu also was shot and taken to Thomas Jefferson University Hospital. He was treated and then arrested and charged with first-degree murder. In June 1982, Abu was tried. Despite conflicting testimony from key witnesses, Abu Jamal was found guilty and sentenced to death. In 1994, Abu Jamal returned to radio once again as a commentator for prison radio and for National Public Radio, so NPR. His NPR commentaries were compiled in 1995 as a part of Live from Death Row, which resulted in Abu's punishment of solitary confinement for engaging in entrepreneurship from prison. So he was confined to solitary for, I guess, making money from prison. So I'm going to go to the book, a book here. The book is called Forced Passages in Prison Radical Intellectuals in the U.S. Prison Regime. Right there. What's interesting about reading the title of this book is that I was listening to Dr. Sabi today, and he was talking about how uh, I call them devils, how the white man comes in and tells African people, indigenous African people from the continent of Africa, that because they don't wear any clothes and that they act a certain way makes them savages. And when we're in our natural state, and not just physical state, but in our natural mind, that we are radical acting. So when we read imprisoned radical intellectuals, it's a positive. That's a positive thing. Not the imprisoned part, but the radical intellectuals. So that's just telling you that we are in our right mind and we understand what's going on here in this country and around the world. So what they refer to the prison system in the United States is called the prison regime. But I'm going to read this. It's talking about Mumia Abu-Jamal, Live from Death Row, where let me start here. Some 25 years after, I'll give the writer, the author of the book, after I'm done. Some 25 years ago, after Jackson's, and I'm talking about George Jackson's assassination and Angela Davis's acquittal, Mumia Abu-Jamal in Live from Death Row states that, quote, prisons are where America's jobs programs, housing programs, and social control programs merge into a dark hole, and where those already outside of the game can be exploited and utilized to keep the game going. Political prisoner Laura Whitehorn, released in 1999, similarly emphasizes the function of the prison as an expansive technology of human eradication and political repression. Her theorizing resonates with Davis's statement that prisons do not disappear problems, they disappear human beings. Prisons are implements of genocide and counterinsurgency. On the hand of the U.S., imprisons vast numbers of young third world people so that their lives are destroyed and the lives of their communities disrupted. On the other hand, the government metes out harsh punishments to those political activists and revolutionaries who dare to build militant resistance to injustice. Together, these strategies produce an effective program of genocide. The massive incarceration of Black, Latino, and Native American women and men is meant to unravel the fabric of those communities, while the disproportionate sentences and conditions of confinement of political prisoners and prisoners of war is intended not only to destroy the political organizations that exist, but also to frighten others from attempting resistance. So here it says conditions of confinement for political prisoners and prisoners of war. So when we talk about the transatlantic slave trade of Black people, of African people, we are considered to be prisoners of war. The white man calls you a slave, um, and it's because we did slave for the white man, and we continue to do it today. Needless to say, a lot of people say they don't feel like they're being oppressed, from coming from some people. I don't hear this across the board, thankfully, but some people feel like they're free under the system of white supremacy. This book goes into how fascist this government is. Believe it or not, this is a fascist government. Everybody is under surveillance. Okay, this is not a free country. The land of the free, the home of the brave, please. So it says it's intended not only to destroy the political organization that exists, but also to frighten others from attempting resistance. Now, fear. And Knowledge and I was talking about this when we were talking about Ghost Dog last night. You know, the fear. They impose these harsh realities on us to frighten us out of attempting resistance for executing our God-given rights. This is what they do. So when we're talking about coexisting with these people and not getting up to fight for our God-given rights, you're handing yourself over. You will then no longer become a prisoner of war or political prisoner. You're just a straight out slave. And there's words, negative words that we should label you with, but I'm not going to go there. So you could be a slave if you want to, but you need to understand that fear is not going to get us anywhere. What fear does is going to continue what's going on. So when you have children and you're not teaching them about their history, and you're not teaching them to only fear God, and they over here fearing man, they will continue. They will end up like you, no matter what. Okay, and that's not what we don't want. And I did talk about, this sets a precedence for your children, and your children's children, and your children's children, all the way down the line. And it's a sad thing to think about, that your great grandchildren will continue to be a slave to this country. So in the Black Panther movement, it's a culture. It was set up to be a nation building program for Black people, where it had different areas of in which a society has. Uh, Mumia Abu-Jamal was in charge of the information. He was a journalist, so he was a media, outlet, or the person to get the word around about the progress and I guess the downfalls of the Black community. So he played his part in it. Um, there's also military part. There's the arts parts. There's the social parts of the community. Um, a well functioning, a well oiled car, if I should say so. and that was basically his job. So since he was being watched since he was 14 years old, it's not a coincidence that he would be framed for such a thing as murder. He was very charismatic and popular in the community. His name still ranks today. I believe any conscious Black person, they know who this is. And they understand who this person is and why they're not allowing him to get out of prison, which is a sad thing. But I want to also um, let me get into this one last thing, and let me get there. I'm gonna get there. Wait a minute. Okay, where am I? Okay, right here. So, is it there? Okay, here we go. All right, so let me go back. I'm gonna go back here. Okay, so um I'm gonna read about Weidman. Weidman is a author, and it says here that he schematizes the narrative and entrepreneurial structure that Abu-Jamal, along with other imprisoned writers, critiques and ruptures. So we need to understand that that Abu-Jamal was in prison, but he was also an entrepreneur, and that is amazing. Actually, how he was able to do that, out of the prison system. So it says here the formula for the neo-slave narrative sells because it is simple, because it accepts and maintains categories. Black/white, for instance, of the status quo, because it is about individuals, not groups, crossing boundaries, because it comforts and consoles those in power and offers a ray of hope to the powerless. Although the existing social arrangements may allow the horror of plantations, ghettos, and prisons to exist, the narrative tells us, and this is the important part, these arrangements also allow room for some to escape. Thus, the arrangements are not absolutely evil. No one is absolutely guilty, nor are the oppressed, i.e., the slave, prisoner, ghetto inhabitant, absolutely guiltless. If some overcome, why don't the others? So, so if I can make it out of my condition, a condition that was put on me, and it is what's the word? Consistently put on me, um, and I have really no way of getting out of it. Uh, why can't you? Why can't the others? Why can't the whole Black community come out of their condition? So, so they call it the formula for neo-slave narrative. So this is, it changes your whole way of thinking, in order to kind of like if you're participating in the system, how a pro participator, because we all participate, but there's some that who are in for it, and they're pro, for it. This is the way they think. And what this does is it causes separation within the Black community. It's just common sense. So it says here, in prison, radical intellectuals, writers, and activists frequently dislodge the structure of the neo-narrative, speaking into an iconic void in which their names, bodies, and biographies lack popular recognition. The impossibility of the readers living vicariously through the text reflects in the imprisoned, isolated narrators, studying loss of self-identification, her or his proximity to psychic and spiritual death, and the insufficiency of language and community in communicating whatever it is the narrator is experiencing. So I just wanted to put that one out there. And I also want to talk about one more thing. So I want to get to what page am I on? I want to get back to page 41, where it talks about the prison industrial complex, which is very important. Um, it says here, let me get here. We have to also remember prison regime. So it says here, the conceptual scope of this term similarly exceeds the analytic scope of prison management, prison policy, and the prison or prisoner's experience, categories that most often take textual form through discrete case studies, institutional reform initiatives, prison/prisoner ethnographies, and individualized biographical and autobiographical narratives. So let me go down. I'm gonna go down because it's a lot of information here. All right, so all right, let me go back. Uh, Both the conventional definition of dominion as a discrete territory controlled by a ruling order or state and its etymological relation to the Latin word dominionium, a conception of power that posits absolute dominion in tangible things. The specificity of imprisonment as a regime of power is its chattel logic, or structure of abject and non-human objectification, to the extent that the prisoner or inmate is conceived as the fungible property of the state. As noted in the introduction, the 13th Amendment designates the convict's judicial eligibility for let me start that over. The 13th Amendment designates the convict's judicial eligibility for involuntary servitude or enslavement. The captive is both the state's abstractive legal property / obligation and intimate bodily possession. Orlando Patterson's explication of the roots of slavery offers a useful framework through which to comprehend the root structure of this carceral punitive regime. So here's the expert. The Romans invented the legal fiction of dominium or absolute ownership, a fiction that highlights their practical genius by emphasizing the categories of persona, which is the owner, and res, the thing, and by rigidly distinguishing between corporal and incorporeal things. The Romans created a new legal paradigm. An object could only be a tangible thing. More important, property was no longer a relation between persons, but a relation between persons and things. And this fiction fitted perfectly its purpose to define one of the most rapidly expanding sources of wealth, namely slaves. So that is the background of where this way of thinking comes. It says, let me go back up here. More important, property was no longer a relation between persons, but a relation between persons and things. And this fiction fitted perfectly its purpose to define one of the most rapidly expanding sources of wealth, and namely slaves. So the prison industrial complex is full of slaves, okay? It makes its money off of slavery, which is called the prison industrial complex. So, all right, so I'm going to go to page 48, and then I'm going to wrap it up because it doesn't seem like knowledge is getting anywhere with the recording. I don't know where he went, but I'm gonna keep it going, and then I'll end it. So I'm gonna get to page 48. This book is awesome. It's one of the many that you can read, but I'm just giving a small background of what we're dealing with here. So they go after your young boys and girls, your young Black boys and girls at very young ages, and dumps them into a place called what did they call it? it's called disappearance. So it takes Black people, make them disappear into a system that makes them wealthy. So that's what prison is, and that's what it's for. And all right, so let me go up here. All right, so lastly, I just want to touch on this more about the prison regime. The prison's contemporary reconstruction was presaged by FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. So if you don't know who he was the FBI director back in 1967. Here it says where they announce the new counterintelligence endeavor to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of Black nationalists, hate-type groups, essentially a declaration of domestic war. But let me just stop there. So it says here, so it was to disrupt and to just decimate the black nationalism, right? They call it hate type groups. This is from their perspective. This is from the government's perspective. And who runs the government? Not us. When we're only here trying to fight for the implementation of our God-given rights without subjugation to another people. I call them things because they're not people. To not be subjugated to other things, which are those people over there. We want to live autonomously in our own natural state, and we can't do that when we have outsiders waging war on us. So this was to officially wage war on Black freedom fighters, people who fought for the rights of their people. So it says here essentially a declaration of domestic war on a racially and politically profiled civilian population. Hoover's directive shaped a comprehensive rearrangement, elaboration, and deployment of the state's monopoly on the legitimate use of violence. To consider the bodies of this targeted population, a targeting that I would argue encompasses a conception of the Black body as essentially incorrigible, anti-authoritarian, and insurrectionist, is to also revise Feldman's critique of folk cult to address the specificity of the racialized and here specifically Black state-pursued body as a uniquely pluralized site of torsion and contestation. So it says here, Hoover's description of the counterintelligence program's long-range goals in March 1968 appropriately situates the necessity of a theoretical approach that foregrounds the state's white supremacist constitutive logic. So we need to keep that in our heads here, that this is white supremacist constitutive logic. So this is how they think. His agenda also reflects the particularly of a marshaled and martial state formation that is internal to the United States. So it says for maximum effectiveness of the counterintelligence program and to prevent wasted effort, long-range goals are being set. Prevent the coalition of militant Black nationalist groups. In unity, there is strength. An effective coalition might be the first step towards a real Mau Mau in America, the beginning of a true Black revolution. Prevent the rise of a messiah who could unify and electrify the militant Black nationalist movement. When they put this here, you have to understand, I'm going to go back to this. It says here, the state's white supremacist constitutive logic, this is their thinking. There is no one messiah, and we know that. If I go back to number 1, it says here, an effective coalition might be the first step towards a real Mau Mau in America, the beginning of a true Black revolution. So how does a true Black revolution start? If every Black person is on board. So how could there be to prevent a rise of a messiah? That makes no sense. who could unify and electrify the militant Black nationalist movement. When they took out Malcolm X and they took out all of these freedom fighters, whatever, it was just to instill fear into the people. So they want to rise up against the government. Simple. Simple. Nothing more and nothing less. Number 3, prevent violence on the part of Black nationalist groups. This is of primary importance. Through counterintelligence, it should be possible to pinpoint potential troublemakers and neutralize them before they exercise their potential for violence. So prevent violence on part of Black nationalist groups. Now, once again, that is their way of thinking. They call it violence. We call it defense, defending ourselves against that wave of violence coming from them. They're the ones with the big guns, not us. So this is total manipulation. When you read this counterintelligence program is ridiculous. Right here. So it says this is of primary importance. Through counterintelligence, it should be possible to pinpoint potential troublemakers and neutralize them before they exercise their potential for violence. Number 4, prevent militant Black nationalist groups and leaders from gaining respectability by discrediting them to 3 separate segments of the community. First, the responsible Negro community. Second, let me go back. First, the responsible Negro community. These are people that stay out of trouble. And, though they despise the status quo and the government, they just don't make any noise at all. So that's what they call responsible. The ones that are subdued, the ones that are fearful, the ones who will volunteer their time, their bodies, their life to their subjugation, right? And it's a second, the white community, both the responsible community and to liberals. I'm going to read it again. Second, the white community, both the responsible community and to liberals who have vestiges of sympathy for militant Black nationalists. We know this to be the lie. Okay, just simply by their actions. So no. All right, so these people have sympathy for militant Black nationalists. So when I was talking about back there on Mumia's support page, where they were saying all these people were there advocating for his release out of prison, I refuse to believe that. All of them are liberals. Everybody who was named on that page are liberals. And I think it was stuck on that page just to see who was clever enough to point that out. But I digress. So it says here, simply because they are Negroes. Third, Negro radicals, the followers of the movement. This last area requires entirely different tactics from the first 2. Publicity about violent tendencies and radical statements merely enhance Black nationalists to the last group. It adds respectability in a different way. And number 5, a final goal should be to prevent the long-range growth of militant Black nationalist organizations, especially among the youth. Mumia Abu-Jamal was 14 years old when he went under surveillance. Just 14. So when you think about Bobby Hutton, right, he was not too much older. He was 18 when he passed away, or when he was assassinated. I'll say assassinated because he was killed. And then it says specific tactics to prevent these groups from converting young people must be developed. It's okay to tell your kids to participate in this system, for the betterment of their own lives and possibly for their own people, and to go to college and do all these good things. I'm for education, obviously, but we also need to teach them about our history. We need to teach them about this stuff here, this things like this counterintelligence program, and break it down to them and make it make sense to them. This is what Mumia Abu-Jamal got caught up in right here, because he wanted freedom for his people, and the government, they're just not having it. So what do? They make you disappear. And he was also punished for getting in prison and being able to become an entrepreneur. Okay, out of the prison system. So he found a way, and many others have found a way to do that. And it just goes to show that we just can't be stopped. So I commend Mumia Abu-Jamal for continuing to fight the power. So that's all I have to say about that. So knowledge, I think we gonna need to shut it down. So I think we're done.
Amazing job. Excellent work. This divine warrior woman is the truth. Okay. I'm about to go live over here with Baba Amin and my man Koyo. That number to call in 929-477-1755. Again, 929-477-1755. Press 1 with your questions or your comments. They're going to be talking about double consciousness and a myriad of other topics here. The duality and reality of being double-minded or existing in the realm of double consciousness in America. So again, 929-477-1755. Press 1 with your questions or your comments. Thank you, Shawala Louis Sass, aka the Assassin, for commemorating and coming together to show love and honor to a warrior and give him a warrior's due.
That's right. They fear that Zephaniah 2:1. That's all I gotta say about that.
That's it.
That's it. So shalom.